Hello everyone. Today I'd like to share a soldier's sighting going back to 1989. But before I jump into that, I'd just like to reach out to any serving or former military personnel who've got anything similar to share with me. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It's just information that adds more meat to the bone of what is true unexplained phenomena. And as you will see, I mean, this is not close encounters of the fourth kind, but it's an interesting sighting that I'm going to relay over the next, 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll jump right into it, and I hope you're going to find this interesting. Thank you. I'm now going to share a soldier's experience from 1989 whilst driving home in his car with 3 friends after working all week. Obviously, military-based operative. Andrew, serving in the army at the time, he's now approximately 54 years old. And he's never told anyone what happened on the night that they were driving home back in 1989. Early hours of the morning, I think he said it was September. And Andrew, he couldn't remember the exact date, but told me it was definitely a Friday night, explaining that every regiment took a turn in what was called the Home Defence Battalion. And they'd been on exercise on this particular night and were travelling home. So there's 4 of them in a car. As I've said, Andrew's driving, his friends are in passenger seat. He told me they were based in Oakington Barracks in Cambridgeshire, and his regiment was the Worcester and Sherwood Forest. And he just gave me a brief outline that his best friend was in the passenger seat and his other 2 friends were in the back seat, and they were fast asleep. They were travelling down the A1 and came off at Grantham heading towards Nottingham. Then that would take them onto the A62. And they were going down into the Trent Valley at around 2 a.m. in the morning. This is when it happened. And he recalls going over the brow of a hill and seeing a very, very bright white light. And at first he thought it was a lorry on full beam, sort of coming towards them. Once again, I mean, we did the stories from Weaverthorpe a few of these short accounts ago, and we got the driver in the Saab car being tailed by a white light. I know that's behind him, but we've got this light scenario where these things seem to enjoy following roads at least. Right, back to the story. He thought it were a big Arctic lorry or something on full beam, very bright as he's come over the brow of the hill. He says, from that moment, everything happened fast. The entire sequence of events lasting no more than 10 seconds. Strange, isn't it, how 10 seconds or less can make such an impact on a person's life. And it's just the nature of the strangeness. So 10 seconds, he estimates, from start to finish. And he explained that it was like when you turn your head from left to right as something passes very, very fast. And this UFO, as he's calling it, passed straight overhead, and he's giving it that, I would imagine. I asked him to describe what he saw. I found it hard to describe. Even though he can still see it in his mind. And he described it as a huge disc that looked like it was spinning. But he doesn't think it was spinning. Hence more confusion. He thinks that there were lights underneath it, underneath the craft, as he called it, and they were revolving in a one-off, one-on, anti-clockwise motion that gave it the impression of spinning. Interesting, if this would have been seen at a greater distance, it would have, your perception of what you were looking at would have probably been different. Recently did the Z-shaped UFO in North Yorkshire, which just had offset lights at each end, and as it turned, it gave the impression that the object was Z-shaped, but it wasn't. because the witness had seen it over the quarry. So there's lots of kind of discrepancies when you look at these things from different distances. You know, you could be thinking that you're seeing something totally different when it's close up. So it gave it the impression that it was spinning. He doesn't think it was. Said it were perfectly round, and all the white lights that ran around the craft underneath, we estimated they looked like kind of bright light bulb size. He thinks it was 70 to 100 meters in circumference. That's huge, huge disc. And even though it was pitch black, the surface of the UFO was still visible, if only for a second or two as it passed over the car at an estimated height of about 200 feet. Bearing in mind, this guy's in the military, and you know, we'll get to that in a moment, why he feels not certain, but why he feels sure he's on point with a lot of these things. He only saw it for a few seconds, but he estimated it was traveling at hundreds of miles an hour, perhaps 400 to 500 miles an hour. And like I've just said, he's in the military and he's familiar with fast jets. So as they pass overhead, so obviously he's familiar with the kind of speed a fast jet would pass overhead at either thousands of feet up or coming into land, I would think. Another interesting aspect, 200 foot above the car, no sound, nothing, no air displacement, which you would get. You would get the incredible sound, you would get the air displacement with a fast jet. There's nothing. So we've got an highly unusual object that Andrew's seen. He said if he were going to draw the object, the UFO, it would be a perfect disc shape, round, highly metallic, with no other visible lights or markings on the body or the disc, and gathered lots of information in literally seconds. A bit like a metal washer, with the middle part of the object being darker in colour than the outer part. To the best of his knowledge, it was September when this incident occurred. He also noted that, I think it was in the local press, a police officer reported seeing something unusual, and that appeared in the Nottingham Evening Post. There's probably one to follow up there from 1989 if anybody really wanted to do that. He told me that his friend in the passenger seat woke up as the object passed, and he observed it going into the distance. His two colleagues, shall we say, in the back, fast asleep, they never saw or experienced anything. It passed them by. Now, he said he'd never told anybody about this incident, and he'd never seen anything before this or since. So September 1989. He said he always thought about telling people. It were always in the back of his mind, but he'd held back. So there you have it. It's a short sighting, a military sighting, historic, 1989. You know, we're going back a lot of years, but it's made an impression on this man's life. And that's the nature of unexplained phenomena. That, you know, when you've had a true sighting with these unknowns, they really do sort of scratch into your mind, and you just can't erase it. So what is it about the roads or lonely places, lonely woodland paths, moorland, that the UFOs find so interesting? Obviously, this sighting's about a structured type craft, a circular metallic flying saucer, for want of a better word. But from a distance, the witness would have just seen lights. But time and time again, we get these locations, early hours of the morning, when these objects that don't have to make a beeline for a traveling vehicle, but they choose to be seen. Do the occupants of these things get a buzz from doing that? do they actually realize the impact it's having on people's lives? In many instances, I probably think that they don't, because we may not even figure in what the occupants of these craft, for want of a better word, are doing. We're just, I don't know, collateral damage, and the damage is all inside the person's mind who's seen it. And it's not, in many instances, I do realize it's not particularly traumatizing, but it just leaves that sort of, that scratch where you're just looking constantly within yourself to find an answer to what it could be. 1989, this guy's been doing it ever since, and I don't think it's something that crops up in his mind every day, but if it does come into his mind, I'm sure he'll spend more than a few minutes thinking about it and going over what this thing could have been. And it goes straight across the board for all types of unexplained phenomena, not just the structured craft, the UFOs, everything that we're dealing with, everything that we're looking at. So I will end that now. Hope you've enjoyed that short account. I've lots more like it, and I'm sure there's lots more out there if people want to share these things. It doesn't have to be East and North Yorkshire. It can be, you can just spread this across the country or reach out to other parts of the world. Everything's valid. Everything just adds a little more meat to the bone of what we're looking at or what we're looking into and what answers ultimately that we're trying to find. So thank you very much. If you're interested in the books, they can be obtained on Kindle via Amazon, the Truth Proof books and Night People. If you want to buy the paperback books, they're also available on the Truth Proof website, truthproof.uk. Enjoy your day. Thank you.